Hello and welcome to another Louise Community TV video. Welcome to Tertulia.
A bookshop like no other.
It's week 8 and we're coming to you from our schoolhouse in O'Honey once again. We are looking forward to opening though in 3 weeks time on the 8th of June. So what have we got coming up today?
Later on we have Louise Fein, who's going to be talking about her new book, People Like Us, and sounds fascinating.
I've got some philosophy with Jason Buckley, who's the leading provider of philosophy for children in the UK.
And we also have Cauvery Madhavan, who's going to be talking about her new novel, The Tainted.
Okay, and before that we just say, well, what have we been reading this week? So for me, I started on Theatre for Dreamers, which is a gorgeous summery book. The sun was shining this week and it was my birthday, so I chose this book. And you can see it's just gorgeous yellow, just reeks of summer. It's been written by Polly Sampson, who is on her 5th novel. She's also a songwriter and a journalist and quite renowned. Her book is what they call a coming of age novel. It's got some renown because it features Leonard Cohen. So it's set on the island of Hydra, where he had a house and lived, I don't know whether was it one summer or a few summers of his life. In Greece, not on the west coast of Ireland. It was beautifully hot and yes, very yellow and summery. So he's a character in it, but it's not actually about him. It's a lovely story about a brother and sister actually who end up with a group of people on this island and what happens to them. I mean, I'm partway through it, but so far she has set the scene absolutely beautifully. And it finishes, the review in the Times finishes with saying, what A Theatre for Dreamers illuminates so poignantly is that 60 years later, a lot has been done, but there is still so much more to do before men and women can make the distinction between love and service and have equal access to a perfect universe in which they can create. So yeah, it's an intriguing book. And you, Neil?
Well, I've just finished The Tainted, Cauvery Madhavan, her book about the mutiny in southern India 100 years ago. Actually, the anniversary is coming up in June. This was featured on the Pat Kenny show, by the way, and he gave it a great review, and it's fabulous. It's really good. Recommend that 100%. I'm also just started our book club choice for May, which is Sebastian Barry's new book, A Thousand Moons, and this is kind of like a follow-on from his other book,
Days Without End,
which was lovely as well. So it's a good read, and we have this available in the bookshop at the moment as well.
Okay, so we'll get on with the authors.
Yeah, so over to Cauvery.
Hi everyone, I'm here to tell you about my book, The Tainted, which is loosely based on the mutiny of the Connaught Rangers exactly 100 years ago in India. My book tells the story of the mutiny and, more importantly, the aftermath. What happened to the Irish Catholic soldiers who served the crown, who were so ostracized for that. What happened to the Anglo-Irish officers who were themselves in limbo, not being English enough, not being Irish enough. And what happened to the Anglo-Indians, the children of the Irish, Welsh, Scot and English soldiers who were left behind because they were mixed race. So it's a little known fact that a lot of Irishmen served in India during the British Raj and helped to keep the empire ticking. And I hope this book will throw a bit of light on that episode of Irish history. So I'm going to read you a small section from the book. It's when my main character, Michael Flaherty, Private Michael Flaherty, arrives in India, and it's his first weekend off, and he's going to visit, he's on his way to visit a brothel in the bazaar. Half an hour later, they were in Blacktown, Nandagiri's native quarter, making their way through the filthy lanes. In Raja Bazaar, the main market, Michael lingered in front of a stall selling birds of all kinds, and he was captivated by a large green parrot. Within minutes, he had parted with 1 rupee, having been repeatedly assured by the fast-talking proprietor of the stall, a giant of a Pathan, that he had secured a bargain. For a while after, Michael had been followed by a ragged crowd of children, who shrieked with laughter as the bird squawked abuse from its cage. They grew bolder by the minute, taunting the parrot with whistles and loud screeches, until Tom Nolan turned on them suddenly and let out an almighty roar. Flaherty, you bought yourself trouble, he said sternly. Dogs and monkeys are a nuisance, but at least they can speak. I'll put manners on him, Tom. You can see he's intelligent. The older man responded with a loud snort, just as they halted in front of a two-story house. Through the tiny iron grills set high in the wall, a child's eyes regarded them for a moment, and they could hear her call out, her voice shrill and excited. Seconds later, a heavy latch was pulled back, and the child, no more than 6 or 7, opened the door, her mouth agape. Behind her, an elderly woman bustled down the corridor towards them, and the little girl, her mouth still open, climbed back onto her place on the small ledge beside the door. As she came closer, the old woman threw her hands up in delight. Irish Sahibs! Tom Sahib! Oh, so happy regiment has come back. I having plenty girls, new girls. Dr. Sahib give clean chit. Always my girls very clean. Michael flinched as she stepped closer, leering at him, her teeth stained an alarming red and her spicy breath overwhelming. She clutched him by the forearm, saying, Come, come, Sahib, very good time here. Jesus, Tom, would you tell her to stay away from me? Tom laughed. Lighten up there, lad. Wait till the colonel gets wind of this. Nandagiri's finest ladies are happy to have the regiment back. They followed the woman down the cool, dark corridor, and as they emerged into the inner courtyard, Tom turned to him and winked. Mumtaz Bibi will sort you out with whatever you fancy. Mind yourself now. Make sure you see the girl washes herself before, and you've heard the good Sergeant Major say it often enough. Make sure you wash yourself after. Michael nodded wordlessly. This was nothing like the exotic experience he had been anticipating. Rose petals and peacock feathers, fragrant dusky skin, and bejeweled fingers that could work all sorts of magic. Mumtaz Bibi made Michael sit down on one of the dilapidated chairs in the shade of the narrow veranda while she fussed over Tom Nolan, pulling aside one of the grubby curtains and ushering him dramatically into the last of the dozen or so rooms that flanked the courtyard. Michael placed the parrot's cage on the floor beside him, and he looked around, waiting his turn. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Do leave your comments on Tertulia Bookshop's website. The book is available through them online. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cauvery. That was fantastic. It's really enjoyed that book. So now we're going to go over to our bite-sized philosophy with Reed.
Yeah, so it's Jason Buckley. As I said, he's called thephilosophyman.com. He is the leading provider of philosophy for children in the UK. And he also started some seminars online during this time, which I attended one, which was about freedom. So very interesting in the times that we're in. But tonight I ask him 3 questions. What is philosophy? Why it matters? And what is his favourite philosopher? So hang on for Jason.
Hi there, Jason. Thanks for coming on to Tertulia TV today. Lucas, hi. Lucas Quaison, who's been on with us a few weeks ago and has done lots of stuff with us in the shop, has highly recommended you. I'll introduce you as one of the leading providers of philosophy for children in the UK, and your website is fantastic, thephilosophyman.com. I've booked myself to come on a course tonight at 9 o'clock, philosophy for adults, and I know you do a lot of stuff with children, and you can talk yourself about that at the end. So I'm just going to ask 3 questions. I'm trying this format. The 3 questions will be: what is philosophy? Why does it matter? And do you have a favourite one? So I'll let you kick off with what you think philosophy is.
Super. Well, I suppose there's the what it's about, and then there's the how you do it. So I think the what it's about is, I'd say, ultimate questions and ideas that people can disagree about. So things like, love, friendship, justice, society, sort of big things that matter to us as human beings. But of course, you can explore those through literature, or you could write a song about them. There's other ways you can talk about those things. So I suppose it's also putting that together with the way philosophy's done, which is through kind of careful argument, the sharing of reasons, giving of evidence, but not by doing experiments. So it's things where you can try and get closer to the truth by talking with other people and looking at how those ideas fit together through reasonable argument, I would say. So for me, a big part of philosophy is about that sort of dialogue, and talking to each other. I know when it's taught in school sometimes the old-fashioned way, it can be a sort of history of ideas. Aristotle said this, David Hume said that. And so I think you can read about philosophy, learn about it without actually doing any philosophy at all, because you're just reading a load of dead ideas on a page. So it's all about the talking for me. I'm a very talky sort of person.
Yeah. And why does it matter then? Why should we bother with it? Some people might say, or what difference does it make?
So, I mean, if you think about, in particular, like a lot of the stuff we do in schools, and what people tend to think of most when they think about philosophy is ethical philosophy, so philosophy of right and wrong. And you might think that you study that in order to become a better person, that actually learning about right and wrong philosophically might make you a better person. I think that perhaps is a bit dubious, because I'm not sure that philosophers are necessarily more moral people than other people because of what they've learned about. I think it's very easy to learn about ethical ideas but then not actually put them into practice. For example, you can still be as selfish or whatever as anybody else. But I think there's something about the practice of doing philosophy with other people that does make you a better person, I think. Certainly makes life more fun. But I think so so it's not so much that you are learning about Aristotle's idea of goodness or something like that necessarily makes you a better person. There are some of those ideas I carry around in my head that are part of my personal kind of big P philosophy, if you like, of my sort of outlook on life. But I think the business of trying to be reasonable, listening to other people, playing around with ideas, being willing to think things that you wouldn't normally think, those kind of intellectual practices, I think, can make people more reasonable in both senses. They're more responsive to reasons and just easier to communicate with. So I think philosophy is quite an improving sort of thing. But it's also a really special way of being people. I went once, when I got into this in the first place, I went to a 7-day seminar out in Mendham in New Jersey, a massive 300-acre place that was run by the remaining 3 nuns of what had once been an enormous convent. They've got all this space, and there were people there from around the world, about 15 of us, all sort of brought together by this interest in philosophy. And someone there said that philosophy is a special way of being with people, and I really think that's true. I mean, these sessions that I've been running on Zoom, the ones with adults are great. They're people I've not met before. Sometimes it's friends from different parts of my life who think, I'll come along and see what Jason's doing there. But you've got people from around the world, and you definitely connect more quickly and more deeply with those people than you would if you were doing most other activities. There's something strange about how serious philosophy is that also meets with it being very fun at the other end. The German philosopher, got this from Roger Sutcliffe, a German visitor to a philosophy conference for P4C, once said, "This is deep fun." And I think that's what philosophy is. When you're doing it in a dialogue, it is deep fun. You're really, it's really strange. Sometimes you're having conversations like, is it worse to is it a good thing to push an old man out of a lifeboat to make a way for a mother and for twins? So you're discussing sometimes these kind of in a way horrific thought experiments, and yet there's a strange kind of humor in that, almost like a horrible history sort of humor. And the way you connect with people when you're talking about philosophy, I think, is deeper than other things. I mean, it's lovely doing it with kids as well. You get to see, I think when kids are doing philosophy, you see more of who they really are than they often bring to school. For example, quite often sometimes in a classroom, there are no real people there because the teacher isn't really there as their real normal human being self. Sometimes, especially if it might be a difficult class, they've sent this kind of persona there to do the business for them, and the kids have sent their personas as well. So it's like the teacher's persona and the children's persona, and all the real people can sometimes be a little bit somewhere else, whereas when you do philosophy, you tend to bring your real self and your best self to it, I think.
Yeah, that's a lovely way of thinking about it. Yeah, and I suppose we see our own selves. The group sees it, but you see yourself too. Yeah, And do you have a favourite philosopher? Maybe you don't then, but
I do. Funny enough, the philosopher that got me into philosophy was Nietzsche, through a slightly strange strange turn of events. So what it was, I've always been a bit of a contrarian, and I've discovered just yesterday, because I'm in lockdown with my parents and my niece and my sister at the moment, and I discovered that the contrarian streak probably goes back to my mother. She was listening to the radio, and she said, "This piece of music reminds me of how much I used to be annoyed because they play this when the headmistress was. We were waiting for the headmistress to come into assembly, and I used to get annoyed. Why have we got to wait for her? You know, why have we got to listen to this music?" That's when she was 6. And similarly, I always had a bit of a problem with authority. And I was going to be collecting a prize at prize giving one year at my school, and I knew that the person awarding the prizes was going to be the local bishop. So essentially, just to wind the bishop up, I chose as my book for him to have to present me The Antichrist by Nietzsche.
Oh gosh.
And of course, when he actually came to present it to me, he was completely unflustered and just said, "Oh, I think you'll find that very, very interesting indeed." You know, completely spoilt the moment. You know, but then I read that, and I read some other Nietzsche. I haven't read any for years. I might well reread it. But something I love about him is that I think he said that he wanted to be able to say in a sentence what other people said in a book, or what other people did not say in a book. While there's some of his philosophy that I agree with, there's an awful lot that I don't. He does have this wonderful way of just capturing things in very short words. And I am someone, although I'm talking at great length at the moment, when it comes to written stuff, I like things to be kind of squeezed down and pared down. I'm more of a short story person than a novel person. And I like my philosophy like that as well. I like it to be, you know, short images, thought experiments, concise little short articles that give you a really provocative thing to think about. That's how I like to eat my philosophy. So.
Yeah, it sounds good. No, me too. Well, thanks, Jason. And you were just going to say a little bit about what you do on your website.
Yeah, so I've got sort of quite a lot of different hats that I wear. One of them is outdoor education, which I can't wear at all at the moment. But then I have the philosophyman.com, which is where I do teacher training, and if people want to, you know, have ideas for their own philosophy groups or to talk about with their kids, there's if you go to philosophyman.com, there's a free bulletin which goes out. I think about 17,000 people around the world get that. That has new ideas each week. And I'm doing a thing during lockdown called Brain Squeezers. So at that website /Brain Squeezers, there's weekly stuff there and videos for parents to talk about. And then I've been running an organisation called giftcourses.co.uk, which is aimed at sort of very bright kids, you know, what used to be called gifted children, but that's a bit of a controversial word, whatever you want to call them, those kids who are a few years ahead of their peers. And we do philosophy and online improv and online debating courses for them. And then I've got a new thing, which is called P4HE, number 4, P4HE.org, which is mixed ability philosophy for home educators. We're adding debating to that as well. And we've got kids, again, from around the world getting together Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings for an hour of philosophizing. And that's been a real treat as well, you know, especially for me, because I'm normally nomadic, going around doing one day in a school here, one day there. And it's just lovely to get back to that thing that is so central to teaching, of seeing the same kids each week, getting to know them and see them develop and so on. I forgot quite how much I've missed that from having been, you know, a teacher trainer and so on for so many years. So it's been really nice to get back. So weirdly, I'm actually more connected to people during the lockdown than I was before.
Yeah, sounds like it. No, it's good. Yeah. It's great. Oh, thank you, Jason. And sure, we'll hear from you again sometime. Okay.
Bye. When I'm out your way. So
yes, definitely.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Jason, for your time and for your enlightening thoughts.
And now we'll go over to Louise Fein, who's going to be telling us all about her new book, People Like Us, which sounds fantastic.
Firstly, a big hello to all the lovely people at Tertulia Bookshop. Hello, my name is Louise Fein, and I'd like to introduce you to my debut novel, People Like Us. People Like Us was inspired by my father's family, who were from Leipzig in Germany. They fled in the 1930s because they were German Jews, and my father came to England. He died when I was only 17, so I never got to hear his story. He never spoke about it. And so the book was really a journey of discovery inspired by him. It's a fictional story, but all the events that take place in the book are factual. It's set in the 1930s. Hetty Heinrich is a perfect German child. Her father is in the SS and her brother is in the Luftwaffe. She resolutely believes in the Third Reich and is very much a supporter of Hitler. Until one fateful day she bumps into Walter, a friend from the past, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, perfect in every way, but a Jew. And the book is really the story of their growing relationship in a time when such a thing would have been illegal, and what happens to them. So I'd like to read you a short extract. This part comes from where Hetty bumps into Walter, having not seen him for 3 years, and she's out walking her dog in the early morning. A young man of medium height approaches from behind a plum tree. He has an athletic figure and is well dressed in dark slacks and a cream shirt. He's carrying a woman's basket filled with fruit and vegetables. He peers at me from beneath the wide brim of his hat, his face in shadow. "Yes, it really is you," he exclaims. Kushi, who'd been engrossed with an interesting smell some distance back, rushes towards him, barking furiously. The man removes his hat, revealing a mass of blonde curls, and looks hurriedly about. "Shh," he says to Kushi, holding out his hat as if it were a shield. "Shush, or someone will hear you." The hair gives it away. He's changed, but not entirely. A rough sketch that has been painted over to faultless accomplishment, its lines developed with painstaking, intricate brushstrokes. Walter. I'm 11 again, watching my brother's friend with adoring eyes, willing him to notice me. He steps closer, eyes uncertain, a hint of a smile. It's been more than 3 years since we've seen each other, since that day. "Quick," he says, "let's get out of here. Someone may have heard the dog." He covers his basket with his free hand and runs for the gate to leave the allotments. "Why?" I call after him, glancing around. "Aren't dogs allowed in here?" Walter falters, half turns. "Best not wait to find out," he retorts over his shoulder, picking up his pace to run again. I follow, with Kushi bounding and snapping at my ankles, excited by this new game of chase. Managing not to trip over him, we scramble through the gate and don't stop until we reach a line of trees where the ground once more slopes up into a steep bank. The path runs behind it, right next to the river. On the other side of the bank is a little used lane, and in front of us an old humpback bridge which joins Halische Strasse and onwards towards home. We take the path by the river, out of sight now from anyone in the allotments or the lane, and Kushi leaps straight into the water. Laughter dances in Walter's eyes as he looks back at me, hooking his basket into the crook of his elbow. "Wow," he says. "Little Hetty, all grown up." Under his gaze, something double flips inside, and I feel my face flush. "So?" I can't meet his eyes. "You're all grown up too. And you are a Jew." So there it is. People Like Us. Look out for it. It's out now in a good bookshop near you.
Thank you, Louise. Really appreciate that, and we're looking forward to having the book in the shop in the next few weeks.
Yes, and it's goodbye from us.
Thank you to Jason, to Louise, and to Madhavan, and to us, and to you for listening. See you next week.
Bye-bye.